Is much different. Manhattan is much different than Montana. You have a lot of different circumstances.
The president says testing will be key to any reopening plan. He also says virus deaths in this country may reach 70,000, but
the president says the original projections were much higher. The current death toll in the U.S. is more than 56,000, only 14,000 short of Mr. Trump's projection. Nearly 1 million Americans have tested positive for COVID-19. That's nearly a third of all confirmed cases worldwide.
Fox's Jackie Ibanez, members of Congress planning to return to Washington early next week to consider additional plans to stimulate the economy.
We're probably going to need another phase of stimulus of some form, and that, we've built a bridge to the other side of this crisis, we believe. It looks like we're getting close to opening up in many places around the country, but now we have to think about what's it going to take to make sure that we go back to thriving.
That's White House senior advisor Kevin Hassett. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says he's ready to consider reimbursing states and cities for coronavirus expenses, but not for years-long systemic financial problems. Meat processing down 20 to 30%, according to one economist, but Mike Duffy, the CEO of a food wholesaling company, does not foresee a crisis.
If production is reduced 25%, that still means we're producing 75% of pre-COVID levels. So it's not that there won't be any. It will just take a little longer to get down the supply chain.
Duffy on the Fox News Rundown Global Pandemic Podcast. America is listening to Fox News.
During this time of great uncertainty, Security Title is working to support our essential banks. We are working for the family who would have been homeless if their purchase was delayed, for the families refinancing to lower mortgage payments, for the contractor who has fronted the cost to build a home, and the surveyors, appraisers, inspectors, and the realtors who cannot make a living without selling a house. With our office doors locked and our essential team members complying with all government protocols, in our own small way, Security Title continues to serve our community.
As we stand up to coronavirus by standing back with social distancing, Bank Pacific reminds you that you can come to the bank without going to the bank. Use many of our other delivery platforms like online banking at bankpacific.com, accessing cash at our ATMs, shopping with our debit cards. For businesses, we have secure cash and check drop windows, and we are employing a new smarter mobile app with remote deposit capture in the next few weeks. We're all in this together, and together we will win. Bank Pacific. Brothers but branches, we place roots. Member FDIC.
Another fraud scheme has been uncovered involving medical personal protective equipment.
New York Eastern District U.S. Attorney Richard Donahue says Manuel Revelorio and Donald Allen attempted to take advantage of an urgent national need. They allegedly tried to pressure a customer into wiring $4 million to them in exchange for masks. Court documents reveal the men labeled and wrapped empty boxes to make the sale seem legitimate. Investigators called the alleged actions of Revelorio and Allen a betrayal of fellow citizens and those on the front lines fighting the virus, and warn others to beware of such scams during this pandemic. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
In San Antonio, Texas, police say a young mother killed her 2 children and their grandmother before taking her own life. The woman had recently learned she'd be losing custody of her children. 5 people dead in a home in Milwaukee.
A chilling phone call alerted police to the murder of 5 people. Police say the caller, who is also the suspect in this tragedy, was arrested and taken into custody. The youngest victim, just 14 years old. Milwaukee Mayor Tom Barrett also arrived to the scene, saying a child related to this incident is at the hospital and doing fine.
There is a child who's at the hospital right now, and I think that child is fine, but obviously he's been through a lot of trauma as well.
He noted tensions were high given the ongoing global pandemic.
This is a stressful period.
Authorities at this time say the motive is unclear.
That's reporter Angelica Sanchez of Fox 6 in Milwaukee. The National Transportation Safety Board will release the results of its investigation into the sinking of a tourist boat on a Missouri lake nearly 2 years ago that killed 17 people. That duck boat sank in Table Rock Lake during an intense thunderstorm. The agency likely to once again recommend new safety regulations for amphibious craft, which were not enacted after previous accidents. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Social distancing math. Tossie is infected with COVID-19. She still goes out because she and her friends think it doesn't affect them. Tossie infects 3 friends. Each one infects 3 more. In 30 days, 244 people are infected, including someone's Nana. Most recover, but Nana dies. Reduce your social contact. If you only infect one person, in 30 days the virus spreads to only 4 people. Stay home, stop the spread, save lives.
GRMC's cardiology department treats most complex heart problems. In our catheterization lab, cardiologists use imaging equipment to treat clogged arteries that can cause heart attacks or heart failure. We perform balloon angioplasty, stenting, and other life-saving cardiac procedures. If you suffer from a heart condition, have your provider refer you to GRMC's cardiology clinic at 645-5500. GRMC, where patients are partners.
Cocoa Coffee Company mugs are now here. Show pride for your island as you enjoy your delicious Circle K coffee. Each generously sized 16-ounce mug is etched with Guam-inspired images like Chief Gadao, Serena, 2 lovers, and many more. The Cocoa Coffee Company mug collection is available for a limited time only, so don't miss out. Get yours today and collect them all. Exclusively available at Circle K locations. A portion of the proceeds go toward the Cocoa Bird Recovery Program.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So, thus we start another episode of the most powerful, the most decorated, the most listened to, the most talked about afternoon FM radio talk show in the entire Western Pacific. So good afternoon out there in our international radio listening audience. Glad you're with us again. It's always good to have you on board. So I start out with my reverential reading of the Second Amendment, and then quite often I will go from there to a article dealing with the Second Amendment that I've dredged out of the numerous research materials that I review as part of show prep every day. I've got something here from a website called Scotus Blog. Scotus means Supreme Court of the United States. Scotus Blog does a pretty good job of keeping you in tune with what's going on with the United States Supreme Court. So the Supremes have dashed our hopes in that case arising in New York City, where the city had an ordinance that said you could, if you had a permit, you could have a gun at home, but you could only take it to one of 5 shooting ranges inside New York City. You couldn't take it to New Jersey to show your brother-in-law, or you couldn't take it to your high school class reunion to show off to your old buddies. You just had to keep it at home or take it to a shooting range. So there was a suit, and after a suit was filed and after the United States Supreme Court had granted a writ of certiorari to bring the case before it, the city of New York repealed that ordinance, and the state of New York changed its law. Not really good news. So here's what this article said. The Supreme Court sent a major Second Amendment case back to the lower courts today, ruling that the challenge to a New York City restriction on the transport of guns is moot. That is no longer a live controversy because the city changed the rule last year. But some of the court's more conservative justices signaled that it might not be long before the court takes up another gun rights case. The case in which the justices ruled today was filed in 2013 by New York City residents who have licenses to have guns at their homes, as well as by an association of New York City gun owners. The gun owners wanted to be able to take their guns to target ranges and weekend homes outside the city, but they were barred from doing that by the city's ban on the transport of licensed handguns outside the city, which was enacted in 2001. The Supreme Court agreed to review the gun owners' case in January 2019, after both a federal district court in New York and the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit upheld the ban. But before the justices could hear argument last December, the city argued that the case should be dismissed because it had repealed the ban and the state had changed its laws. As a result, the city suggested the gun owners had received everything that they had asked for and that the case was moot. The justices allowed the case to move forward, but today a majority of the court sent the case back to the lower court without weighing in on the merits of the gun owners' Second Amendment claims. The court's two-page opinion, which was unsigned but apparently joined by Chief Justice John Roberts and Justices Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Stephen Breyer, Sonia Sotomayor, Elena Kagan, and Brett Kavanaugh, explained that as a result of the changes to state law and the city's rule, the gun owners have gotten exactly what they asked for. They can now take their guns to a second home or a shooting range outside the city. The court turned next to the gun owners' claim that the new rule still violates the Second Amendment rights because they can't stop for coffee, gas, food, or restroom breaks en route. The court noted the city's assertion that the gun owners are allowed to make such stops and stated that in any event, the Supreme Court's practice is not to referee that dispute, but instead to send it back to the lower courts to decide. In the same vein, the court declined to weigh in on whether the gun owners can seek damages for the city's violation of their rights under the old rule when they had not previously done so, leaving that question for the lower courts as well. Justice Samuel Alito dissented from today's decision in a 31-page opinion that was joined in full by Justice Neil Gorsuch and in large part by Justice Clarence Thomas. Alito was sharply critical of the decision to dismiss the case as moot, arguing that his colleagues were allowing our docket to be manipulated in a way that should not be countenanced. He makes a good point. You know, New York and New York City changed their laws just to moot out that case, and they were successful. First of all, Alito argued the case is not moot. The gun owners had alleged the Second Amendment gives them unrestricted access to gun ranges and vacation homes outside the city, and the new laws do not give them that. As a result, Alito reasoned, although the gun owners got most of what they wanted, they didn't get all of it, and that means the case is not dead. Moreover, Alito added, if the court were to conclude as the gun owners request, and as I believe we should, that the city's transport ban violated the Second Amendment, the district court on remand could and probably should award damages, which would also be enough to stave off mootness. Addressing the merits of gun owners' claims, Alito concluded it is not a close question whether the city's transport ban violated the Second Amendment. In his view, the transport ban involves the same core Second Amendment right at the heart of the court's 2008 decision in District of Columbia versus Heller, which we've talked about at some length here on the show, which held that the Second Amendment protects the right to have a handgun in the home for self-defense. The city's arguments about the extent to which the transport ban protects public safety, Alito suggested, were weak on their face and were not substantiated in any way and were accepted below with no serious probing. And if it's true this case is typical of the way that Heller has been applied in the lower courts, Alito cautioned, there's cause for concern. Justice Brett Kavanaugh filed a concurring opinion in which he explained that he agreed with the majority that the gun owner's original claims are moot, but that new claims could be addressed first by the lower courts. But Kavanaugh also indicated that he agreed with Alito's general analysis of Heller and McDonald versus City of Chicago, in which the court made clear that the Second Amendment applies fully to the states, and that he shares Alito's concern that some federal and state courts may not be properly applying Heller and McDonald. Kavanaugh posited that the Supreme Court should address that issue soon, perhaps in one of the several Second Amendment cases with petitions for certiorari now pending before the court. So this will go back to the District Court for the Southern District of New York. It'll probably, if it gets back to the Supreme Court, it'll be 2 or 3 years before that happens. So not really good news for Second Amendment buffs, except those who live in the city of New York. And it's interesting, I have ruled here that the Supreme Court should have dismissed based on mootness. Sad to say, that was the correct ruling. Courts don't issue hypothetical opinions. But it's interesting to see the lineup of the justices who went with that line of reasoning. It's a strange group. It's Chief Justice John Roberts, the what's her name? Ruth Bader Ginsburg. The terrible Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Yeah, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Stephen Breyer, Senorita Sotomayor, Elena Kagan, and Brett Kavanaugh. So 2 justices that were appointed by Republican presidents, and the rest appointed by Democrats. And they all got together on this particular decision. Of course, as part of the duties of Tall Tales, I'll be watching this case and all other cases that deal with the Second Amendment as they percolate through our court system, and I will keep you advised of the latest developments therein. Okay, so from there we go to, what's it called, Real Joe Cruz?
You forgot again, sir?
No, I'm testing you. I just wanted to see if you're awake.
Zemi Kutney.
Which is... which is a backwards play on words, my backwards play on word, backwards bilingual play on words that means meet the press. And that's what we do every day. I take the editorials that run in our 2 daily newspapers, criticize the heck out of the Daily News, usually bestow a certain amount of praise on the Post, and give the blue star, the coveted blue star, to the better of the 2 editorials, which has been 193 times to the Post and 57 times to the Daily News. So the Daily News played true to type again today. They're running an editorial from the USA Today editorial board. I think they have strong misgivings about writing editorials about what's going on here on the island. Maybe they think there just aren't enough issues for them to get out their editorial software and write an editorial on what's going on here in the island. USA Today has a pretty good editorial here. It's what U.S. can learn from other nations. And they've listed what some of the other countries have done. South Korea and Taiwan learned from early outbreaks and established pandemic preparedness offices that swung into action soon after the World Health Organization was notified December 31 about the pneumonia-like cases, later confirmed as Wuhan virus. emerging in Wuhan, China. Taiwan began checking passengers from Wuhan for fever and other symptoms that same day, and South Korea started to screen and quarantine arriving Wuhan passengers 3 days later. I would bet you dollars to donuts that if Lou Leon Guerrero saw this, she would get out an executive order ordering that we're not going to let anybody from Wuhan into Guam. How much you want to bet, Real Joe Cruz?
$10, sir.
$10. All right. And then in Taiwan, South Korea, Iceland, and Germany, they rapidly test and contain, began stockpiling test kits even before their first first Wuhan virus test. And Germany, communicate with authority, candor, and science. We don't communicate with much candor around here. German Chancellor Angela Merkel drove home the need for social distancing by declaring Wuhan virus the most serious challenge Germany has faced since World War II. It certainly helped that she had once been a research scientist. Well, our governor's been a nurse. Yeah. 5 democracies ease the physical and economic damage wrought by Wuhan virus through quick and informed leadership. Americans can rightly ask why the United States has been exceptional in the wrong way. Now, of course, the USA Today editorial board has a one-word answer to that question. You know what that one word is, Real Joe Cruz?
What word?
Starts with T and ends with P. Can you figure it out?
Toilet paper?
Trump. Toilet paper.
Same thing, sir.
For them it is, yeah. Well, actually, the USA Today is same thing, yeah. Okay. Now, on the Post, I'm going to double up on the Post. I'm going to do their editorial, and then I'm going to pluck something from their own opinion page that has, I suppose it could be classified as an op-ed submission. So I'll go to that right after I award the Blue Star to the Post, which says, lifting roadblocks good, but actions to help economically distressed still lacking. By now, almost everyone who has gone through the Wuhan virus roadblocks can agree their usefulness and practicality have been in doubt from the start. Wow. Talk about diplomatically. Everybody thought they were incredibly stupid ideas. You know why everybody thought they were incredibly stupid ideas? Because they were incredibly stupid ideas. Yeah. National Guard soldiers and airmen, to their credit, did what they were told. And that's to stand in the heat, sometimes rain, in the middle of a highway to carry out an incredibly stupid order. I just added that into the editorial. But I felt sorry. I actually went through one last night. On my way down yesterday morning, the Dato checkpoint was not open, so I just whizzed right through. Going home, I thought, well, maybe it'll be closed. So instead of taking a long detour, I'll just go straight. So I had my first experience with the checkpoint, and I really felt sorry for the poor guardsman. He's a young PFC. He probably joined the Army Guard, figuring, stuff like rifles and going to the field and physical fitness and everything. He probably never thought that he would be required to stand in the road and parrot an incredibly stupid script. I have a feeling that if the National Guard doesn't do something about that, their recruitment efforts are going to be very difficult. Who would want to sign up? We'd like to enlist you in the Army National Guard. Son, let me see if you're qualified. Can you say nursery rhymes? Like Mary Had a Little Lamb, or Old Mother Goose, or Old Mother Hubbard. Can you say those? would you mind standing here in the middle of the room for the next hour saying foolish nursery rhymes? We want to see if you're up to the kind of work that we're going to have you do as a guardsman. If you can't do that, well, I don't know. We may have to deal with a serious territorial emergency that's going to require people to stand in the middle of the road and say incredibly stupid things. And if you can't do that, well, it's going to be kind of tough. Yeah, you want to give it a shot? You don't? I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all. Maybe, maybe another reserve component would be more suitable for you. I don't think the Army Reserve here in Guam puts its soldiers into such silly positions. But anyhow, these soldiers and airmen did their job in the most courteous way and ought to be commended for their conduct, even though motorists knew the guardsmen understood what they were saying had little impact or practicality. But going back to the scripted comments the guardsmen were told to say to motorists, that information was well known to Guam residents. So funneling motorists into one lane in each direction at these roadblocks only did the opposite of what government was trying to do, reduce close contact with other people and get people in and out of traffic quickly so they could stay home. With the roadblocks issue now moot, that's going to be the day of the word, Real Joe Cruz. I mean, the word of the day.
Moot.
Moot. With the roadblock issue now moot, we hope our local government can focus on what's important. The governor's plan to extend the public health emergency for 30 more days provides more opportunity for our elected officials to do really stupid things. And no, that's not what it said. I just put that in there myself. For our elected officials to zero in on solutions to help economic distress our island residents who aren't on the GovGuam payroll are going through now. The governor was again under the spotlight Monday, facing questions about what she can do to help, given so many of the island's residents are suffering economically. Referring to the federal government-funded direct economic aid and unemployment benefits that haven't yet arrived, the governor assured quite adamantly she isn't standing between the federal money and the people who need it. The federal jobless benefit and direct aid from the CARES Act aren't available to Guam residents just yet, her administration said. I'm not holding any of this money back. Why would I? It's worth repeating that the possibility for the government of Guam to provide direct aid to households in need is still waiting to be fully explored. And interestingly enough, you remember about 2 weeks ago, Michael San Nicolas, who was our Washington rep, not a local official, said, hey guys, here's a couple of things you could think about. And that's about the only creative thought process that has been brought to the situation. It doesn't help people going through hardships that the local government is taking credit for the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program benefits as if it's Guam's own. For the administration and the local senators, it's really a question of whether there's a willingness to provide aid urgently through local efforts without jeopardizing federal programs. We suggest the governor once again assemble the wise men and wise women in her cabinet. The wise men and wise women in her cabinet? Well, for once, there wouldn't be any social distancing problems, would there? If you got a room with nobody in it, it's pretty easy for everybody to stay 6 feet from everybody else. Okay, we got to take a short break. Coming back from the break, I got Frenchie and another Joe out there in the green room ready for their 15 minutes of fame.
One of the easiest ways to prevent the spread of COVID-19 is to wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. Let this message help you time it. Start soaping up Now, if you're sick or caring for someone who is, wear a surgical mask or N95 respirator when you're around others. If you're not sick, wear a washable cloth face covering in case you're an asymptomatic carrier. Don't touch the front of the mask and always remove it from the back. When you cough or sneeze, use a tissue or your upper sleeve, not your hands. Choice Broadcasting reminds you to stay safe and stay clean. You can rinse now. The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties. Call 646-7616 or 777-7792. You can also visit them at horizonpropertiesguam.com.
And now, back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Yeah, here we go. So, I just love this line. We suggest the governor once again assemble the wise men and wise women in her cabinet. I wonder if I sent a sunshine law request to the governor saying, could you please identify the wise men and the wise women in your cabinet? Please provide all public records that show the names of the wise men and the wise women in your cabinet. I'd get a letter back from Janella, no such record exists. Yeah. Okay. Those wise men have their, let's see, we suggest that the governor assemble them, have their eyes closed, and make them internalize what it would be like if they're not getting paid for 6 weeks. And then the punchline of the editorial, they've got to get out of the comfort of their fully funded paychecks, plus 25% in Wuhan virus differential, to understand what it's like to have nothing in these troubling and uncertain times. Well, that's a great punchline. And on the basis of what I've just found here, the Daily, as you were, the Post once again receives the coveted Blue Star. Yeah. A round of applause for the Post, a well-deserved round of applause for the Post. And let me see what's going on here in France. Let's see, ladies and gentlemen, we take you now to. Good afternoon, Frenchie.
Good afternoon, Bob. I thought I was going to go after the other Joe. I'm first caller today.
You are the first caller.
Anyway, yeah, I wanted to address a couple of quick points before I go into my main topic today, which is going to be the church versus Adelup. Yesterday you read Lou's column about women's rights and all those things, and basically, I kind of agree with you that it's all about the desire to promote women in every aspect of our social life. And basically, it's the fruit of what we've seen for the last 60 years, of what is called the modernist way of thinking, or the modernist mentality. And basically, it removes women from their role, which is a millennial role, and sometimes they take other responsibilities, but which has always been to be a mother and a spouse. And sometimes at a very high cost for themselves. And this removal of women as in their first role has the full intent to totally disorganize, if it's not to destroy the natural family, which you've talked about so many times. And when you put in consideration the advocacy of the governor regarding abortion that makes it even worse. So that's all what I had to say on that topic. I don't know if you have anything else to add.
No, other than giving you a verbal pat on the back, you're right on point, Frederick.
Okay. And I know you're probably chomping at the bits today to analyze the CYA, the cover you're behind, that was done by Senator Kelly Marsh, who I've forgotten the Taino part of her name, which is basically a bad justification to answer your column where you criticize her. I'm sure you're going to cover that.
I have a couple of words to say about that, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure. I totally trust you on that one. So, in the church versus Adelop, yesterday, unfortunately, I couldn't listen to the whole end of the show because my bodyguards outside were making a ruckus. I had to go and investigate what was going on. So, but there is. You were kind of critical about how basically the Archbishop was complaining about not having enough money, and this was a result of their own policies of not opening the church. If I can generalize.
Well, you're close. I used a market analogy. If you're a store. People come to your store and spend money because they want what's in your store. Well, the church, I pointed out the church is not a store, but people, we have churches for one really basic reason, Mass. And when there's no Mass, people don't go to church. And when they don't go to church, they aren't going to put money in the plate because there's no plate to put the money in.
That is correct. But I think the story is a lot bigger than that.
It is.
As you know, the Vatican is right in the middle of this because they pushed through the Bishops' Conference the idea that the churches had to be closed in this crisis and to follow civil authorities' recommendation. So and bishops tend to listen to what the Pope is telling them, unless you're called Apuran. This is also a big. I don't want to make excuse for the Archbishop, but this is also a big reason why, through the Bishops' Conference, this is how we ended up following the DPHSS recommendation here. And but at the same time, I know from talking to several priests and other people involved at the Chancery that there was a lot of people that were not very happy about it and that wanted to find other alternatives. And what's very interesting is that this past Sunday, Father Paul at Our Lady of Lourdes in Gigot made an homily which was very combative, to say the least, while he was doing his Chamorro Mass on Sunday morning. And it has become a social media hit. Actually, it's some friends of mine sent it to me, and I didn't see it right away, and then I opened it later, and I was like, wow. So I contacted Father Paul and asked him what was behind all this, and then I contacted several other people through the Archdiocese trying to make sense of this. And of course, a lot of people don't know, but Father Paul is also the vicar for liturgy for the Archdiocese. So this is not something that comes out right out of the blue. There has been priests working, of course, online because they have to be separated, for several weeks now on how to reopen the churches and doing it safely and to address also getting the sacraments to the needy and to allow for confessions and many other things. And in his homily, he was very hardcore on a lot of those issues and was asking the faithful to literally bombard Adelup with their request. Those are pretty big words. But what we didn't know is that apparently the Liturgy Commission last week had sent their recommendations both to the governor and to the DPHS director, who apparently shut it down without too much comment and kind of poo-pooing the whole idea. And it apparently didn't go very well at the Chancery because of the way their recommendations were received, or basically not being taken at least in consideration, or say, well, we'll look into it, give us a couple of days and we'll get back to you. They were shut down right away. And on what I understand is that the Archbishop is even considering going ahead with reopening the churches regardless of what the government says. So it's a lot more confrontational than it first appeared. Now you have to put in that the consideration that the Archdiocese bankruptcy has been put back on the back burner because of the creditors' opposition to the proposal of a reorganization. And guess who is the biggest creditor to the Archdiocese? I'm sure the real Joe Cruz will know that answer. And so this is where we are right now, and it appears, at least, that we might end up with a very big confrontation between the church and civilian authorities. And knowing the weight that the church has on this island, it could become something of a news story. So I encourage everybody to kind of go look into this for themselves, to kind of figure out, what they think and how they position themselves on this. But I think it's a story that's going to be developing. Yesterday, Candid News did about a 10 to 15 minute piece on that they call, I forgot what they called it. I think they were calling about sacraments essential or something like this. So, of course, the local media will be 2 or 3 trains behind Candid News because they are kind of trailblazers on that. We'll see how that goes. So what do you think?
Well, I'm going to take a wild guess on behalf of the real Joe Cruz and guess that the church's largest creditor might very well be the Bank of Guam. Am I close?
Yeah, we need a round of applause from the real Joe Cruz.
Yeah, well,
yeah, that's exactly what it is. So it looks like there might be some water in the gas and some big troubles brewing. And I think the Chancery has received a lot of inquiry from the faithful, and so have the parish priest. And there is a lot of people that agree with your position that it is not the governments to tell people how to worship. And we might end up having one of those groundbreaking conflicts here. I hope that Adelup follows their usual modus operandi, which is to be very stubborn at first and then reconsider it 6 days later when they see that a lot of people don't agree with them. But we'll see. It's going to be very interesting to watch.
Well, I thank you for sharing this. I addressed an item on the card called "The Bishop versus the Lockdown." Yes, on yesterday, just at the end of the program, and I promised to come back to it today. But you've added a lot to the discussion before I've even opened it. So thank you very much, Frenchie.
Yeah, well, I hope the discussion opens up and that a lot of people participate into it, because I think it's like you said earlier this month, it's really a First Amendment perfect example of government interfering in the right of people to worship as they please. So we'll see. So thank you very much for giving me the time to express those issues, and I'll keep on listening.
Okay, thanks for calling, Frenchie. Good talking to you. All right, well, that does certainly gets into what I was starting with on yesterday. So we're already up there at that second break, huh? Okay, I'm going to come back to another Joe and our Carl.
Oro makunom, matana lom suman kumin healthy and niceness. Karingin kumniki mit saye nakshi kisin zinkinyen fashion klon ma saying in takani and wang napashali matana lom suman. Akayakom ace mongle asho shkamo ofal esukumines be vitamin nasum. Karingin gupsifena in niceness in tia apashali. O about to kungom som na yen, tia kalmotom, infame, inwelum, e aknas na siyen kumatakyan. Inaksafye ako la. Arela emergency contact list lom, aro inash mo aknas nas ka onlo in nom suman, nakarangin in jash mit masin nom suman. Aro makuno minako ye aknas na siyen kuam in nasnas aim safe. Tanak manas, matana in nom suman. Message saying e masin manyetlu, Micronesian Resource Center at Choice Broadcasting.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Security Title, providing solutions for complex real estate transactions.
So here we go, back again. We got about 15 minutes here before that big halftime show that we all look forward to with such vivid or rabid anticipation. And I've got a caller on the line here. It's not you, real Joe Cruz. His name is Joe, but it's not you. It's another Joe. Good afternoon, another Joe.
Yeah, Bob. It's a difficult act to follow there, the French guy, but I'll do what I can, do my best here with the development. The devil's in detail, but we don't want to include the devil too much. Right. But so I accept your challenge there, Bob. You said part of the the task or the job application process is to recite a childhood rhyme. So I accept your challenge. Hickory dickory dock, the mouse ran up the clock. The clock struck one, the mouse ran down, hickory dickory dock. Does that mean I get hired as a national
author?
Oh, snap. I guess I'm incomplete.
Oh, okay. That was almost as inspiring as this book I read when I was young called Dick and Jane.
Oh, snap.
Dick.
I apologize.
Dick, see spot run. Jane, see Dick, see spot run. Run spot, run, run, run. Yeah.
But my favorite is Jack and Jill, but I digress. Back to my initial question, Uncle Bob. Now, here we are with less time for the prospective candidates running for the legislature and other positions that are open, but the same due dates. And the election has not been rescheduled or called off for this year. It's happening in November, I believe. So is there going to be enough time for newbies, prospective candidates to enter the race, or is this race basically for the incumbents? I don't know if that's the way it's pronounced, to be for them to run away with the lion's share of the votes, so to speak. Is it theirs to lose?
Well, the incumbents certainly have the advantage of getting a lot of earned media, whether it's favorable media or unfavorable media. The old saying is there's no such thing as bad press. And someone who wants to be a challenger, I don't see anybody who has mounted. There's nobody out there, and I wonder if anyone understands what it takes to be a serious challenger. I've made this remark so many times that when people want to run for the legislature, the first thing they do is they hunt around in the back room for a 1972 playbook, and then they follow that playbook to the T. It's not going to work. You know, anyone who's running for, who wants to be elected in November ought to be the subject of some conversations today. If someone is sitting around saying, well, I'm going to wait till this Wuhan virus thing is over and, I can file my... You're not going to make it, buddy. You're just not going to make it. It's not how it works. So as we sit here right now, I'd say probably the incumbents have the advantage, even though some of them were it not for the kind of shutdown caused by the virus, have screwed up so bad that they'd get turned out of office. You'll remember after the big salary smash and grab, was a turn the rascals out movement, and 7 senators lost their seats, including Tina Rose Monia Barnes. So I hope that answers your question, another Joe.
And what about the third parties? They're not even they are being more active?
Third party?
Like with the Ken LG endorsements. There aren't any.
Well, I wouldn't call Ken a third party, but I'd say this whole Wuhan virus thing works to his advantage, because you'll notice he is still his method of communication has not been impacted at all. And Ken is doing what a candidate ought to be doing. He's out there making noise, talking about the issues, taking positions. And if Joe Sixpack wants to run, Ken would be a pretty good model, because you can't sit at home and say, well, as soon as the virus is over, I'll start my campaign. I'll put my signs up. Yeah.
Okay, come on. Appreciate your time. Take care.
Always a pleasure, another Joe. Okay, so we go from another Joe to not another Carl, but our Carl. There was a time during the campaign season that we had 3 Carls. We had the Carl, a Carl, and our Carl. So what I have online right now is our Carl. Good afternoon, our Carl.
Hey, good afternoon, Bob. Yeah, we have an elite club, the Carl Club, and we meet once a year. And there's not many Carls, so it's a pretty short meeting.
I hope you guys stay 6 feet apart from one another when you meet.
We'll try. Yeah, I just wanted to bring up, when I was listening to your reading of Guam Daily Post editorial, which I think was very good. It called to mind that I just happened to be listening to part of Rush's show as I was doing other things, and a caller called in, and he made a really important point that I'd never thought about. In this situation on Guam and in the mainland, we usually think of the heroes, as the healthcare workers, which I don't want to take anything away from them. They're, some of them are working extremely long hours, and they are risking getting infected. But if they're not in the vulnerable group, they would recover. In 99.9% of the cases. And I think that word sometimes is thrown around a little too much. It's like participation prize. Everybody's brave, everybody's a hero.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying they don't, deserve some acclaim, but they are getting paid for it. They're no doubt long hours can be pretty grueling work.
Yeah, if I could just interrupt here for a second, Carl, I make this observation quite often when I hear people saying, I dedicated my whole life to public service, 35 years of public service. I have a question. Were you getting paid for that? Oh, yeah. Well, then what was it, public service, or was it your job that you were doing? I kind of think coming from the same angle you're coming from. Go ahead.
Yeah, and, there's good and bad, people in every field, and the best ones do the best job. They work extra hard, and they're tremendously good at what they do, and they're tremendously devoted. I understand that. And when we think of victims in this Wuhan virus thing, we usually think of the people who get the virus, especially those who pass from it. Fortunately, there haven't been that many on Guam. But this caller that called into Rush's show made a point I never really thought about. And he said the real heroes in this case, and I would call them just the hero, the ignored heroes, let me put it that way. And the ignored victims are the millions of people all across America and the thousands of people on Guam who have literally given up everything they have. I drove down to Tumon because I was hoping to catch Bank of Guam open for some. I heard their Tumon branch was open, the drive-through. For some reason, it's only open 9 to 1. I have no idea why. The other banks are open till 4. But I went down there. I never had a reason to go down to Tumon since this fiasco started. But I drove through there, and it was eerie. Just how little the traffic was there, how few cars were parked. I mean, it was really almost like a ghost town. And my wife used to work, at the Pacific Star, which became Marriott, and then back to Pacific Star. And so I'm very acquainted with this, and I have an empathy for the people that work tremendously long hours and at hard work. They don't make a fortune at what they're doing, and they work even on holidays. And I was thinking of all these thousands of people on Hotel Row that had lost their jobs, and all these businesses along Hotel Row that might never open up again. And it just really drove home to me this caller's message that the real, or the ignored heroes. Let me see, the ignored heroes in this whole fiasco on the mainland and on Guam, and the ignored victims in this fiasco are the employees who have given up their jobs, the small business owners and some large business owners that have lost out. And a lot of these employees are going to come back to jobs that no longer exist. A lot of these business owners are not going to open up their business again. How many? I don't know. We're in new territory. But I just have a sinking feeling because this economy has not been fantastic. And this might just be the thing that pushes a lot of businesses over the edge. At the very best, a lot of these employees will come back to reduced hours and reduced pay in order for the business to survive and start up. Because these businesses aren't going to open their door and their windows one day and the next day everything's back to normal. This is going to be a long, slow uphill climb. And some businesses may attempt it and die on the way up this hill trying to get their business restarted because people are still leery about going to restaurants, about going to any public venues. There's still a lot of people who are scared about that. So yeah, that's my thought I wanted to add in. That,
well, I'm glad you clarified that because I thought that when it came to the real heroes of this whole Wuhan virus thing, I thought that probably most people would figure that it was me and the real Joe Cruz, but I guess this is the first time.
You guys aren't ignored. Everybody kind of realizes that. So
yeah, I suppose. Yeah, I got to count.
I think that's public knowledge.
Count my blessings.
Yeah. But anyway, I wanted to add my 2 bits for those thousands of people on Guam who the government officials, the elected officials, seem to have no empathy for and are willing to stretch this out into infinity.
Yeah, well, Lou is...
no regard for the repercussions.
Lou is just glad that they're still alive to write letters. So we're coming up to the halftime show. We've got Ron McNinch on the line, and Mike rang off. So, Ron, you can stay on through the halftime show, and I'll pick you up right after the show. And, Mike, if you want to call back after the halftime show, we'll get you on right away. So let's enjoy that halftime show.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
to restart. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. President Trump Monday urging states to begin the process of getting back to business.
We recommend that they do it as quickly as possible, but safely. We want everyone to be safe.
Telling a White House briefing states will have the support of the federal government, and several states have begun the process.
Georgia and Tennessee opening restaurants. Mississippi and Montana opened retail shops at limited capacity. Colorado instituted curbside shopping, while Minnesota opened some agriculture and manufacturing, and other states allowing elective medical procedures.
Fox's Brian Yanis. Texas Governor Greg Abbott says he'll allow the stay-at-home order to expire Thursday. Ohio's Governor Mike DeWine announcing a phased reopening, beginning with elective medical procedures, followed by non-essential manufacturing and retail operations by the middle of May. All reopenings tied to safety procedures and increased testing.
What the president brought about with this public-private partnership has brought us to the point where we've done 5.4 million tests to date, and literally you just heard that by next month we could be doing as many as 2 million tests a week.
Vice President Mike Pence today will travel to the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota to be briefed on a new testing program that could check 20,000 people every day. Now a new worry. Italian and British medical experts investigating a possible link between the coronavirus and clusters of what appears to be Kawasaki's disease. That's a severe inflammatory disease among infants who are arriving at the hospital with high fevers and swollen arteries. There are now more than 3 million infections worldwide, the United States with nearly one-third of those. After a positive day on Wall Street that saw the Dow gain 358 points, Asian stock markets closing Tuesday mixed. Dow futures are trading nearly flat. America is listening to Fox News.
During this time of great uncertainty, Security Title is working to support our essential banks. We are working for the family who would have been homeless if their purchase was delayed, for the family's refinancing to lower mortgage payments, for the contractor who has fronted the cost to build a home, and the surveyors, appraisers, inspectors, and the realtors who cannot make a living without selling a house. With our office doors locked and our essential team members complying with all government protocols, in our own small way, Security Title continues to serve our community.
As we stand up to coronavirus by standing back with social distancing, Bank Pacific reminds you that you can come to the bank without going to the bank. Use many of our other delivery platforms like online banking at bankpacific.com, accessing cash at our ATMs, shopping with our debit cards. For businesses, we have secure cash and check drop windows, and we are employing a new smarter mobile app with remote deposit capture in the next few weeks. We're all in this together, and together we will win. Bank Pacific. For others but branches, we place roots. Member FDIC.
The Senate returns to work next week to consider new economic stimulus plans.
Days after suggesting state governments consider bankruptcy laws to settle budget shortfalls, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell tells the Guy Benson Show on Fox News Talk relief for states and cities is likely to be a part of another round of coronavirus relief.
But we need to make sure that we achieve something that will go beyond simply sending out money.
McConnell is also proposing legal protections for healthcare workers and businesses from lawsuits he argues are already being planned by opportunistic trial lawyers. Jared Halpern, Fox News.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says it might be time to consider a guaranteed income for Americans. The U.S. Census Bureau planning to restart field operations on June 1st, but says that plan is dependent on state lockdown orders and the availability of protective gear for census workers. Election Day in Ohio and parts of Maryland today, but mostly by mail. In Ohio, it's the primary election rescheduled for March, and in the Baltimore area, a special election to fill the congressional seat vacated by the death last year of Congressman Elijah Cummings. An electric car maker announcing a new feature to move them closer to completely self-driving vehicles.
Tesla reports it's giving the green light to a new feature that can identify stop signs as well as traffic lights. It's part of a pledge by CEO Elon Musk to convert cars to fully self-driving by the end of the year. This latest feature is part of the electric car maker's cruise control and auto steering system, but the federal government could put the brakes on the effort. The National Transportation Safety Board has limited where the self-driving cars can operate, citing 3 deadly crashes linked to Tesla's autopilot system. Tom Graham, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Everyone
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Cocoa Coffee Company mugs are now here. Show pride for your island as you enjoy your delicious Circle K coffee. Each generously sized 16-ounce mug is etched with Guam-inspired images like Chief Gadao, Serena, Two Lovers, and many more. The Cocoa Coffee Company mug collection is available for a limited time only, so don't miss out. Get yours today and collect them all. Exclusively available at Circle K locations. A portion of the proceeds go toward the Cocoa Bird Recovery Program.
If you've ever struggled for breath, you know what a scary experience it is. Whether you have asthma, emphysema, COPD, lung cancer, or another respiratory illness, the right medical treatment makes all the difference. GRMC's Pulmonology Clinic has the latest technology and respiratory equipment, staffed by world-class pulmonologists. Make an appointment today with GRMC's Pulmonology Clinic and start breathing easier. GRMC, where patients are partners.
Talk Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Well, Ron, I hope you enjoyed the big halftime show.
Oh, thank you, Senator. Happy Day, Guam.
Yeah, you know, you had the best audio for the halftime show of anybody out there in our international radio listening audience, because you were able to listen to it on your phone.
Oh, yes. Well, thank you very much. You know, there's an old saying, the only winner of the War of 1812 was Tchaikovsky. So.
Good call, yeah. So what can you tell me today, Ron?
Well, you know, I was listening a little bit earlier on, and regarding churches, and I guess the consideration that some want churches to be reopened, and certainly, I have a feeling that if the Catholic Church or other churches simply submitted a proposal for the lifting of that particular aspect of the isolation, and came up with some basic guidelines, that is, I think that most people would probably agree with it and support it. I think it's just mainly getting out that they have a set of planning points. That is, they want people to wear masks, or they want people to be socially distanced a bit, or whatever their plan would be.
Well, the caller during the first half of the show, named Frenchie, said that the chancery did that, and they were rejected out of hand.
Well, then that's where I would then suggest that they put it out to the court of public opinion, because if they made a set of reasonable, fact-based suggestions to do that, I'd like to know about it, because I'd like to support the church if they did that. And I think that, or if your station could get a hold of maybe the points from the letter along their proposal, I think that'd be a great thing to share with people, because I think that businesses and companies taking the initiative to move things along is the way to go. And I think that the more folks can articulate their positions like that, the better.
Well, I've I've talked about this on more than one occasion, but there's nothing in the First Amendment that says Congress shall make no law respecting establishment of grocery stores nor prohibiting free shopping thereat. So, if it would seem that a religious institution that complied with what I refer to as the pay less rules ought to be able to pass without objection. But I'm going to go into this in some depth in the card, Ron. I have some things to say about the government and about the church. But
right.
The point that came up today was that the church actually sent a letter to the governor saying this is what we want to do, and Frenchie said it was poo-pooed.
I would love to see the letter and read the letter and support the letter if they had reasonable, those reasonable payless rules that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
I think that most people would be in full support of it. I think what the concern is from a lot of folks is just throwing all caution to the wind, which I don't think anybody would really agree with. But I think in terms of taking reasonable incremental steps that on the one hand protect the thing I'm really worried about are people who are health at risk, who have no protections at all, and and who want to go to church without knowing that they need to take certain steps to go there safely. I think that's everybody's goal, from what I'm understanding.
Well, I'm going to be critical again of the governor. The same governor that gave us the checkpoints came up with her list of essential functions and things like that. We made the decision back in 1791 that going to church is an essential function, and to not even address it as she went about putting these rules in place was, in some respects, at least disrespectful, if not tone deaf, because what could have been said was that religious institutions that comply with reasonable rules will be permitted to operate. Not, church is not essential, therefore you're out of the picture.
Right, and I probably am not in total agreement with you on the checkpoint thing, but on the church thing, I think that there's a lot of important points that you've raised here that are very important that people need to know and listen to, because it's an entirely different kind of set of basic protections. And I do think that we need to work with religious institutions and ecclesiastical leaders when they make the offer to do so. And that's why I'd love to see the letter or the set of points that they offered, because if they came up with some reasonable points and they had a plan.
You see, this is my point. Why do we put them? Why do we put the test on them? Why do we want to see their letter when the government was wrong in the beginning? And the government said, you're not, here are the essential functions. Church is not one of them. So therefore, you can't have anybody come in. In the very beginning, the governor should have said, here are the essential functions, one of which is the free exercise of religion. And here are some things that in the exercise of free exercise of religion that churches must do. Now, they didn't do that. So the latest we have is some information that the church sent a letter to the governor saying this is what we want to do. And now we're saying, well, I'd really like to see that letter. I think that's backwards, Ron.
Well, that's probably where I would slightly disagree with you, Senator. I think if we're talking about building alliances and getting a mass of residents and voters behind an idea or concept, such as lifting and adjusting these restrictions, that's when you want the information out. That was my point on that.
Yeah,
that particular
well,
point.
see, I see this as cut from totally different cloth. I see us at the top of a very slippery slope, and a governor who has no problem whatsoever coming along and taking the First Amendment and pretending she's Nancy Pelosi and tearing it up without saying, without a by your leave, sir. So the burden's on them. It's not on the church to come forward with some good works or something like that. And the slippery slope thing is could possibly be the longest lasting downside of this whole Wuhan virus thing, because the governor has seemed to be very adept at jumping in and restricting people's liberty. And the choke points is a good example. The church is another good example. Draconian rules, apparently for the sake of draconian rules.
Well, I think that, again, churches to me are a very, very different kind of policy area, and I certainly respect churches and support churches in their free exercise of religion, absolutely, and I think we're in total agreement on that. And finding what the best angle is to help churches to open up and maintain their services to the faithful, I think that's a worthy cause. It's one that we should celebrate. It's certainly a great area of discussion that you brought up today, and that you, along with your listeners, I think is a very important part of our social and civic conversation. Now, not everyone may agree with you, or we don't always disagree or agree on everything as a citizenry, but I certainly think that protecting our religious institutions and protecting the rights of the faithful is a very, very important value. We do need a lot of consideration and be very careful about when we discuss them, and changing the conditions of a person's practice of religion or the way their belief structure works is a very, very important set of steps we need to take. So I think we're
I keep coming back to this, Ron. I see this as a constitutional issue. You know, that the program begins every day with a reading of the Second Amendment, because that's the foundation of the whole thing. And if we can take that part of the First Amendment and treat it so cavalierly, I think all of our rights, as guaranteed by the Bill of Rights, are potentially at risk.
And I certainly agree on the slippery slope concept and trotting on persons' basic fundamental individual rights, particularly those in the First Amendment, is an important thing. And I think particularly the religious part that I certainly am in agreement with. But I also think that one of the grand things that we have in our society is a show just like yours, where people can discuss and debate these things and think about these things in larger depth, not just on the shallow headlines level.
Okay, Ron. Well, thanks for helping me do that this afternoon.
Hey, have a great day, sir. And I agree with you on Nancy Pelosi. I have no idea why she ripped up that document. I thought it was low class.
I think probably it had something to do with a paper shredder manufacturer that was one of the lobbyists that got to her before the day of the State of the Union speech. But that's just my conjecture.
Yeah, my conjecture is she wasn't able to actually read the document, but
that's just as good.
More negative.
Okay,
have a great day, sir.
So long. So I've got Mike on the line, and after Mike, I've got Martinez. So, Mike, I thank you for your patience.
Yeah, no problem, Bob. How you doing?
Good.
Yeah, I'd just like to make a comment there. Mr. Rodman Lynch does have a point, you know, and also your point about protecting our constitutional right to religion. I mean, that's the foundation between separation of church and state, is to ensure that the government does not interfere with the affairs of the church.
That's right.
So, to some degree, I do agree with it. But what I'm trying to say is, it's beyond political. You know, it's also biblical. We got to consider if you're a true believer of Christ, and you would know that denying people the Eucharist in the Catholic Church is depriving them of their entitlement to their true belief in Jesus Christ. So it's beyond political, in my personal opinion.
It's far more serious.
Yeah, it's far more serious. But going back to, you know, how God is always being taken away from our schools and the way of life, you know, I mean, the way I grew up, the island that I know, the true Catholic island that I know, that, you know, religion was always the forefront. But now things have changed. And going back to your 1972 playbook, I don't know if that's the exact date, but if you read the rules for radicals, that is the book.
I've read it.
The playbook that Clinton has followed, Hillary has followed, Obama has followed.
The neo-Marxist. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the reason why a lot of our constitutional rights have been chipping away. It's because people are surprised at the way the administration is being run, but this is a small level. I mean, look at Rockefellers and all those other rich families controlling the United States. Globalism. That's why we want to go globalism, because everyone has an interest in China and making money. So Trump is trying to bring it back to the U.S. and make it strong. So it's a big subject. It's very broad, but I just want to say that it's more than just political. It's also biblical. So I think we need to hone into that.
Well, we're going to keep doing that here on Tall Tales, Mike. So I want to thank you for your chiming in, Mike, and you're 100% on target.
Oh, thank you, Bob. I love listening to your show, man, and a lot of good things, issues where we can address and without retaliation.
There you go. Okay, Mike. Nice talking to you. Thanks for calling.
Okay, thank you, Bob.
Okay, so I got Martinez, and then after Martinez, it's Marvin. It's not exactly alphabetical order, but it's going to have to do. Okay, Martinez.
Bob, it's Martinez.
Yes, sir.
On Thursday, our dear governor is going to make her announcement and her plans to reopen Guam, like other governors are doing. One of the things I'll be watching and others is, does she put the hard-working GovGuam employees back to work? Now, let me ask you something, Bob. If she does not put the hard-working GovGuam employees back to work, or let's say she puts them back to work at a later date, like, 10 days later or something, then that means the GovGuam employees that are working will continue to get double pay. Is that correct?
Close, because the governor signed, Kelly, as you were Helena Nelson's bill today, so they'll get double pay and then at least another 10%.
Yeah, so that's the thing to watch. Because don't you think, the schools are closed in UOG and GCC, but besides that, don't you think every GovGuam agency, including the other two branches, should reopen on May 6th?
Based on because they're getting paid, or what
No, because there's no sense. There's no sense to not make them work. They say she just reopened now on May 6th. Or do you think some should still be closed?
Well, I don't want to. I was thinking about it a little bit. I would think that if they obey the necessary rules, there's no reason why all of the government can't reopen. And of course, it's bothersome that, so many people are getting paid to stay home when other folks have lost their jobs.
That's right. So we'll see on Thursday, and if she does extend it, then we'll see what the Chief Justice and the Speaker will do. They don't have to follow the governor, or do they here?
They do not.
Those two branches.
They do not.
Do they have to?
They do not have to follow the governor.
All right, so we'll see what they do. If she says, close for another 10 days or so. So I'll be watching Thursday. I think others will.
Okay,
Bob. I'll enjoy listening to you. Take care.
Okay, Martinez. Okay, so that's Martinez. My last caller here now for a few minutes, I suppose, is Marvin. Good afternoon, Marvin.
Hi, it's the Battle of the M's today.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Mike, Marvin, Martinez, yeah.
Right, yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to kind of follow along the same line as I agree 100% with what you're trying to get at. The Constitution, the first number one constitutional right is freedom of assembly and freedom of speech, and everything else is based on that. That's number one. Number two is the freedom to bear arms, and that's so you can keep your first right. So this is dangerous. The government in general, not just here, everywhere. They're setting a precedence or in safety or whatever they can dream up with, of taking away all kinds of your rights. And the thing of it is this whole shutdown, people don't see it. I mean, even I knew it was bad, but I realized even today watching the news, I thought the one people are going to make out are the health professionals. But what's happening is even hospitals and nurses and doctors are getting shut down. They're shutting down floors because they shut down all elective surgeries. So people aren't getting things they need, like, you know, they got knees replaced, or even people are avoiding their chemo treatments, all kinds of stuff. And so all kinds of people are going, they're not having biopsies done, you know, so all kinds of people will die from that. And it's an entire supply chain, everything. Think locally. It's not just the hotels, it's all people working at the hotels and the restaurants, but it's also the suppliers and the warehouses and the dry cleaners who clean the sheets, you know, and, you know, this permeates throughout the entire economy. Everything gets hit. And it's the same way in the United States. They think that shutting down the restaurants and the bars, that's good, that's fine, you know, that's okay. But really it's not. Everything is intertwined and connected together. So anyway, I just see this as a very dangerous, slippery slope, like you keep saying. That's what basically my point is. I agree. This is a real slippery slope. Once governments, they set a precedence for taking away rights, it's easier for them to do it the next time, where they could chip away at them real easily. Anyway, that was my only point. I could rant on forever, but you don't want to hear me rant. Okay.
Well, I'm glad you called, Marvin. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.
Yeah, the slippery slope could be the greatest harm caused by the greatest long-term harm for the Wuhan virus is that it will embolden government officials to think that it's okay to start infringing on constitutional rights and other rights. You know, one of Lou's first action to combat the Wuhan virus was to gut the old government law. Now, I suppose that a microbiologist could tell us that, yes, viruses can't survive unless there are open government meetings. I don't know, the whole thing, it just made no sense. But it really showed me exactly where she was coming from. The first thing you do is start working on the protections and rights, protections of the people, protection from their government, and the individual rights of the citizens, and you work outward from there. My comment on where we are as far as the economy is concerned, and it really comes down to something very basic, and that's this. There has to be production in order to create wealth. There has to be production in order to create wealth. If you're a farmer, you have to have a crop. You have to bring in a crop to make farming worth your time. You plant the corn, you weed it, you water it, you fertilize it, and at the end of the season, you go out and harvest the corn. If it's sweet corn, you can eat it or sell it or whatever. But if you don't produce anything, no wealth is created. And when no wealth is created, there's no wealth to spend on somebody else's wealth that somebody else created. And that's where we are. So no matter how many checks we get from the national government, until we start creating wealth, our economy is going to be in a bad situation. That's where we are right now. See, I got a couple of calls coming in here. I got our Carl back on the Ferris wheel for a second time. Carl, you took a long ride the first time. You're going to get altitude sickness here if you're not careful.
Yeah, that's true. It's addicting. I'll make this short because I've already had my one ride, and there's someone else that wants to say something. I'd just like to ask a quick question, and shouldn't take you that long to answer. I've wondered in the past, and I've been meaning to ask you for some time, why did you choose to intro your show with the Second Amendment? Because the First Amendment is really the foundation of everything, right? I mean, the freedom of religion, and to exercise thereof, the abridging the freedom of speech, freedom of the press, peaceable assembly, and then as Marvin pointed out, I think its Second Amendment is to defend against tyrants who would want to take away those God-given rights in the First Amendment. Why did you choose number 2? You don't.
I'll let you.
I'll let
you in on a secret, Carl. All right. Yeah, talk radio, first day out. Talk radio, no matter how brilliant the host, no matter how incisive his comments, no matter how right-thinking he is, no matter how righteousness-motivated he is, talk radio has to be interesting. Because if it's interesting, nobody cares how righteous you are or how good your points are or whatever. The First Amendment's too long.
Oh, okay. All right. I get it now. Yeah, I was just wondering what your reasoning was. I was sure there was some logical reason, and that does make sense. Yeah. Okay. Well, you've answered my question.
And also, you know, it is the introduction, and I use it as a vehicle to point out how important the Constitution, including the Bill of Rights, is to Tall Tales. And I mentioned that that's the reason that I start the program with the Second Amendment, to call everyone's attention to the fact that this is a conservative, sort of libertarian, Constitution-oriented radio program. That's why we read the Second Amendment at the beginning of every show. Good question, Carl.
Okay, well, you've solved the mystery. Thank you.
All right. Okay, now I'm going to be put to my test here. I've got someone on the line who is going to tell me that he doesn't know, that I don't know Jack. And in order for me to properly prepare for that call, I've got to take a break. Right after the break, Jack.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Family Finance has been serving the people of Guam since 1959, and they'll continue to be there for you in the years to come. Whether you're looking to get a personal loan for that summer vacation or paying off those long overdue bills, Family Finance has got you covered. Apply for a personal loan from $1,000 up to $3,600 by calling Family Finance in Agutya at 475-4545, Upper Tumon at 647-5626, or in Dededo 633-4473. Family Finance, serving the people of Guam since 1959.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties. Call 646-7616 or 777-7792. You can also visit them at horizonpropertiesguam.com.
So here we are again, Wrigley Field, Chicago. Nobody in the ballpark. Nobody out on the baseball field. No baseball games going on. No peanuts. No popcorn. No Cracker Jack. Tall Tales lives on. So as the next episode of Tall Tales, I've got Jack on the line here, probably to tell me that I don't know Jack about something. Right, Jack?
Good afternoon, Bob. Let's just say that I've been with you since day one, since the other radio station. And to your defense, you have always defended the Constitution. And the reason that I remember why you picked the Second Amendment is because at the time that you came on, it was at a constant onslaught with the mass shootings and things like that. And even though you did not agree with the way Justice Scalia came about his reasoning or his methodology, you did agree with the outcome, if I remember correctly.
Hey, you're right,
But
Jack.
you did not agree with because of the word militia. You forgot about it.
Yeah.
Even though we've had numerous discussions about that.
Mhm.
But anyways, I just wanted to ring in on what's at hand right now, and that's about the First Amendment. And I think we've had this discussion before. You know, we said it offhand. The reason why we have the Second Amendment is to protect the other amendments. And also, you brought this up a couple of weeks ago. Did you not bring up about that drive-through church service?
Yeah, I think I did. Yeah.
Yeah. And how the judge at the time gave a TRO
right
in favor of the church, Christian church, right?
Yeah.
And so, if you just could remind Dr. McNitch, if it's online, and the memorandum opinion is on there, and it reads beautiful. So if you can, just grab that, and maybe it's kind of hard because our church is being attacked. I'm Catholic. I try my best to be a good Catholic, and it's hard work. It's very hard work. Can I just say that just knowing your faith or learning your faith as you grow, it becomes harder and harder. Not because about belief. Well, that has belief in it, but it sort of takes you on the rational road of decision and decision making. And if I did not choose my faith, if I did not believe, I would not be the person that I am today. And it guides me on my way and one of the things I do. And the absence of Mass, although we speak about foods and necessity, or what Maslow speaks about, the higher archetypal needs, food, clothing, shelter.
Right.
And it isn't until you achieve those things that you could concentrate on the higher things, or the abstract things. But I think he was a little bit wrong in that, because even primitive cultures, they always reach for the abstract when trying to explain away, death, droughts, rains, and stuff like that. But it is important that the freedom of conscience be protected, even in times of crisis. But this has been your theme, even before the virus hit us. It's always been your theme. At what point do we sacrifice our freedoms for security? And that's been a theme even since you've been on the other radio station. And it's been a constant theme, and that's the things that these are the things that we have to wrestle with. And, I've been quiet for a while. I'm just trying to keep my family safe. And, I do believe that hopefully with the lifting of these roadblocks, things start to become normal. But at the same point, I do believe that no matter what the crisis is or what the normalcy is, unfortunately the politics will be there. And, it'll always be that it's those in the lower rungs that will be suffering the most, and that's unfortunate. And, we just have to just weather through it. And I just hope that Dr. Ron McNitch would just read that opinion on that Louisville case, and hopefully it'll shed some light on why it is, and what you said is it's not on the onus of the church. I mean, there's no difference between Payless. We're lucky, when I'm looking at designs on the floor of every Payless, the gas station, we're very lucky that the virus doesn't move sideways. It only moves forward and backwards. So, if we were moving sideways, we'd be in deep kimchi.
Okay, Jack.
I just want to say keep up, keep up with all the amendments and do what you do best,
and
just to shed light on what is true out there, what is factual. And we all need to check ourselves. Even though we're right in most occasions, the rightness really doesn't place us in the position of being overburdened to provoke people. So I'm learning that. It's a constant thing that I need to work on, my temper, and that's what I'm trying to do.
Jack,
Constructive criticism, but when it comes to talk radio, since it's not my program, I usually choose the shortest route. Usually that's straight up the gut.
Well, Jack, you did a good job today. It was a real pleasure for me to talk to a real tall tales scholar who remembers, the show from the very beginning and the overweening themes that prevail. So I'm glad you've been with us all that time, and thanks for calling in today and setting the record straight. Thank you, Jack.
Have a great day, Bob.
Thank you. Okay, so I've got Marvin next, and then I've got Senator Chris. Okay. Marvin's second ride on the Ferris wheel.
Hey, Bob.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to. The Constitution. People get really confused about the Constitution. The Constitution was created when the founders. They knew government was a necessary evil, and because all governments want more and more power, and a better and better controlled populace is easier to govern. So they wanted it so that, in other words, a complete and total dictatorship is the easiest to govern. By far for the people at the top. So a free people is the hardest to govern because we just go and do whatever we feel like. We're free. So the Constitution. That's why. So the Constitution was written to protect the people from the government, not the other way around.
You're absolutely right.
That's what the Constitution was written for.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the first things about religion today was most of the people were coming and still coming to America to flee religious persecution. They tried to get away from the king's church and everything because the churches were reinforced by the government back in those days. So they wanted to practice their religion freely. That's why you could be. You talk about Catholic churches, but you could be. It also protects atheists and also protects devil worshippers, and it's whatever you want to worship. So, anyways, in the Second Amendment, that whole thing. What would you call a militia nowadays? You'd probably call them terrorists, or what do they call those people?
Well, I went through this. I've been through this more than once, and militia, as it's used in the Second Amendment, meant the military force, in my interpretation of the Second Amendment, meant the military force maintained by each of the colonies and then each of the states. But actually, as time went on, metamorphosized into the National Guard. That's what now a lot of shady characters have grabbed a hold of the word militia, and it's resulted in a certain amount of confusion. But the guys out west with, gun racks in the back of their pickups and 30-30 rifles in the rack are not the militia. The closest thing we have are National Guard.
No. I'm not saying they're militia. I'm just saying that it was who they were to form a militia was protect. It was basically to protect your hometown, protect
your hometown. You oftentimes from the Indians. That was
or any tyranny. Basically, the Second Amendment. There is to. I'm not saying mass shootings. You're getting confused here. We're talking about defense. Defense of your freedoms. It was for the defense of your own freedoms and your family, your freedoms, and your property. That's what that was put in there for. So anyway, And the other thing is that I see on the news today the doctors took down the YouTube video. They went on a long time about California, and they did a long structured thing taking the numbers, and 0.03% of Californians actually get sick. And 0.03% of Californians actually get sick to the point where they get hospitalized. And they did the statistics of how many people who are now not getting all the other procedures, critical procedures, like even heart and strokes and things. They don't want to go at people who are actually dying anyway. They went through a whole online, but YouTube took down the video. It was just taken down this morning.
Yeah.
It ran throughout the weekend, and YouTube is censorship. You can't have an opposing view on this. So I mean, they were actually spouting science. When they say science, this whole thing is drifted way away from science. Is into politics. Most of it's politics. I mean, they're not quoting science; it's politics.
I agree, Marvin.
If anybody, anyway, okay. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. I guess that's it. But thanks for taking my call.
Glad you called, Marvin. Okay, so we're coming up here in a home stretch. We're going to go to Churchill Downs. I'm going to go from Churchill Downs to Senator Chris Duenas. And after that, if there's time before the end of the show, I've noticed that the Real Joe Cruz has opened up the Jimmy line.
Sir, yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, so right after when we're on the home stretch, Chris, I'll get to you.
GRMC's Neuroscience and Neurology Department treats a wide spectrum of disorders associated with the nervous system, spine, and brain. Some of the more common disorders include seizures, epilepsy, dementia, sleep disorders, migraine, and stroke, which is one of the leading causes of death on Guam. GRMC's neuroscience team is equipped with the latest technology and the finest neurological doctors. To make an appointment, contact GRMC Specialty Clinics at 645-5500.
Half a day. This is Michelle from APL Guam. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated teams in Guam and on the U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Talk Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky. No horses, nobody in the grandstand, but Chris Duenas is waiting patiently outside the track. Good afternoon, Chris.
Half a day, Your Honor, Senator, and my favorite talk show host, Bob Klitzkie. How are you?
Fine.
I want to, before I go into the issue of the First Amendment, then I certainly won't put myself in what the opinion article today in the Post says of knowledgeable, intelligent advisors, but I will offer at least one small piece of advice. But I want to celebrate a victory, and that is I went through the entire checkpoint Charlie lockdown without going through one single checkpoint.
Well,
and I did that, Bob, out of defiance.
You did.
I refused to accept it, and I didn't care what route I had to take, and I didn't care what additional time it might have cost me, although it probably didn't, because of the fact that that time I would have been sitting in that line anyways. But I absolutely defied it, and I was victorious in ensuring that I did not go through one single checkpoint to be told that I need to wash my hands, not touch my face, practice good hygiene, clean my goods from the grocery store after I came home, and clean the surfaces within my household.
Someday we'll be looking back on the checkpoints and saying, you know, those were the good old days.
Anyways, I have a little bit of an angle here, and I think you may appreciate it. I think the governor is going to have to be very careful, and I would hope that, as Martinez is discussing, maybe on Thursday we will learn that the church's plan has been reconsidered, and there will be allowances for worship and expression under the First Amendment. But something that I was talking to a friend about earlier is there's also that national push, and if you look at priorities, I think in Michigan and other places where governors have kind of lost their mind, they went out of their way to protect the right to have an abortion, but not to worship. Nationally, that is a really big deal. I think it could become a really big deal locally, just because of the implications of that issue and I think with our governor currently having taken a very strong stance on being against pro-life and pro-choice, that will be indelible ink at some point in terms of that issue, which us pro-life Catholics really have a problem with.
Well, it's interesting that states that have said that elective medical procedures would have to be postponed, the pro-abortion folks come back and say, well, abortion's essential. It's not elective.
And that's kind of what I'm talking about. So if you take that to the a higher degree, folks in the Christian faith, by and large, I've really never met a Christian church so far that is not pro-life. One of the main reasons to come together, other than the sacrament of the Eucharist, is to pray that we continue to change our ways and value life. And there are people I know, particularly the Manamko, my family, and others who have taught me and raised me to be pro-life all of my life, that one of the singular reasons they go to worship at church is to pray for the souls of the unborn.
It's a good reason. Yeah.
And I can tell you that there would probably be no stretch. So with limited political capital, if there is even any left, I would really, really be careful in this one, and I would really reconsider, especially since the church has presented a plan, and I know that many people really, really want to worship and want to go and to the house of prayer.
Well, when you have a governor who, as Jose Martinez so quickly pointed out, when some were gloating about the fact that we had the first openly homosexual lieutenant governor in the country, Jose Martinez pointed out, we also have an openly pro-abortion governor who has been openly pro-abortion and since going all the way back to the lawsuit in 1990, where our own law was declared unconstitutional. So she's made no secret about it. And after she's elected, she dealt with an emergency caused by the fact that we hadn't had a reported abortion for over 6 months. I remember that emergency. And this was her first crisis in office. So she sent Jane Flores out to see if she could find an abortionist for us. So I guess when her administration takes an anti-Catholic mass approach, we can't be too surprised.
I think you're right. To close out, Bob, our good friend over there, Speaker Nancy, says, let them eat ice cream. I think our mantra should be, let us worship.
Good call, Chris. Good call.
Thank you, Senator Bob, and enjoy the rest of the show, and always enjoy it. Take care, my friend.
Okay, Chris. Good talking to you. Okay, so now I wonder how many Jimmys do we have on the line today? Just one? Only one. And he's from Missouri, right? Yeah. So let me see. I think if I remember this correctly, he was telling me about this time he was somewhere out in the middle of Missouri, and he was asking his dad for directions, and his dad said, well, if you want to go to Nebraska, you go that way, and then you turn right. And if you want to go to Kansas, you turn around, you go south. But if you want to go to Illinois, you want to go to hell, turn around, go back to Illinois. Right, Jimmy?
That's correct.
Yeah.
But that wasn't my daddy, that was my grandpa.
Yeah.
Okay, full disclosure.
Yeah.
Full disclosure. I have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. My relationship with Jesus Christ is not mediated by anyone else. It's just between me and Jesus. Second full disclosure. I have never, ever participated in any inquisition. Third full disclosure. I have never, ever had sex with an altar boy. And as Martin Luther said, here I stand, I can do no other. But anyway, can we talk about facts?
Okay.
If you look wherever the Spanish colonized, from the Philippines all the way across South America and Mexico, where they colonized, the people that live there in those countries all want to go to where the Northern Europeans, the Lutherans, okay, we're talking about 400 years ago, they all want to go to those countries. So the system that the Catholic Church established in their colonies, Guam, how many want to go to the States? The Philippines, how many want to go to America? Mexico, how many want to go to Guatemala? How come they don't just stay there? If their system is so good, why do they want to go to a system established by
Jimmy, you're begging
Northern European Protestants?
Jimmy, you're begging the question, if you know what that means.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're committing a logical fallacy by begging the question. Your question relies on an unproven assumption.
No, I said just look at the facts, and it's not begging the question, and you're not answering the question.
Well, you said, what did you say, Jimmy?
I have never had sex with an altar boy.
No, I mean I got that part already.
I have never bought an indulgence.
Yeah, I got that part.
I have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ.
Yeah, you don't have to go back that far, Jimmy. The point that you were trying to make, your why don't they point.
Why don't they just, if their system is so good.
Now, there you go. There you go. If their system is so good, your question relies on an unproven assumption. In fact, two unproven assumptions. So it's logically a fallacy.
Actually, it's a provable assumption.
That every cat. No, wait a minute, Jimmy. So you're saying that everyone who is a Catholic would say our system is so good.
No, you're using the logic. Every dog has 4 eggs. Table has 4 eggs. Dog is a table.
Yeah, blonde is a bucket. Well, it's been a little slice. It's been a little slice of heaven, Jimmy. But all good things must come to an end. So we'll see you tomorrow. Okay.
I hope so.
All right.